it comes to health, consider new options. Take the leap. Your dendrites do. Let me tell you what that means to me. When I say that I'm an energy healer, it's interesting what people will do and the reactions I get. Some people will ask me, what kind of energy healing do you do? And then we can discuss options and methods and techniques, because there's very many of them and lots of options for you. Others might just stay silent, and then there's others who turn away and don't know what to say at all. But let's consider what this energy healing is all about. Every day we use energy. For instance, you sleep, you rest, you eat in order to regain your energy so that you can go about your day every day. But we don't think about that. We just do it knowing that it's something that we need to do. We also will take our cell phone and we will punch in a number or a name and hit the send button, and that signal goes off to a tower or a satellite and then beams over to make a connection to somebody else, and we get the person we want, and we don't even think about it. But that's energy. It's airwaves that information is sent off to. It's an invisible energy. That's why I say take the leap, because your dendrites do. In our brain, right now, while I'm doing this speaking, there are tons and thousands, maybe millions of dendrites making connections. But between each dendrite is some space, just a small amount of space. And that's where the energy healing really takes place, is in that space. It's interesting that we commonly say to people, take the leap, take the jump, go ahead, do it. Because inherently in our minds and our bodies and our beings, we understand what that taking the leap is all about. In health, what is very interesting is if you think about what energy is, the definition of energy, it is about the expression of strength, life, or spirit. And that's what I work with, is that energy, that strength, that power, that life, that spirit. And the definition of health, based on my unabridged dictionary that sits on my credenza at home, says that it is about becoming sound, well, or healthy again, which means that our bodies inherently understand health and well-being, and what we want to do is be restored to health. Now that's different than when people come to me and they say, I want to be fixed, and I always say, I don't fix, I help you heal yourself. And I work in that space of energy between those dendrites, or between you and your pain, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical pain. For instance, an example would be if a rope is broken and you want to use that rope again, and you need to get it to be long enough that you can, that you tie the knots in it to make that one piece again. That's fixing. But healing is more about the rope being able to weave itself back together, returning to health once again. I would like to share a few experiences of that. One of them was about a woman, with a woman that had acute pain. And this was early on in my healing experiences, when I was first trying these things out and really getting used to my healing abilities. My husband and I, we were driving home from California, and we got this great idea to stop and visit some friends in Arizona. So we called them up, and they said, come on by, please do, and stay the night. You can head out again in the morning. Little did we know that Barb was in extreme acute pain. She was having trouble sitting or standing or even lying for any length of time. She had pain down her hip and down into her leg all the way to her toes. And I was a little hesitant to say anything, but my husband decided to. He said, you know, Cheryl does this energy healing and maybe she could be of help to you. And she was willing. So in the time that I was there, I did 3 hands-off energy healing experiences with her. And what I did was just scan her body and feel where the energy needed to be released. And I could tell that the pain was hot and fiery in her leg. And I was able to keep working that to release more and more of that energy. And then finally, on the third session, I was able to track the energy all the way back to where its source was on the spine. And on the spine, it appeared that there was like a little tiny nubbin, a little tiny maybe calcification. I wasn't even sure. But I was able to get that congestion broken down. And that relieved pressure from her nerve. And I explained to her how she could do a little of this on her own so that she could be able to continue the healing process. And I also encouraged her to go ahead and go to her doctor, which she had an appointment for 3 days away from that because it was going to take her that long to get into the doctor. I found out later after I returned home that the pain went away completely and it hasn't returned since. Now that's an example of acute pain and how I was able to help her release that pain. Now, some people might think that's magic, but I don't think it's magic. I just think it's magical because I work in that subtle energy between the dendrites, between you and your pain, whether it's a mental, emotional, or physical. I'd like to share another one about an emotional pain that a gentleman had and came to me. Now, he was a tough guy. He was in his mid-20s. He lived rather a reckless life. In fact, he was coming to me after he had had a serious physical injury, a car accident in which he broke many bones in his body. And when he came to me, he said to me, "Cheryl, what I want you to do and help me with is to cry again, because I remember when I chose not to cry, and I want to cry because instead of crying, I became tough and a little mean-spirited." So it took several sessions to get all the layers of all that toughness off of him that he'd accumulated in his 20s and his teens and his early years. But then we finally got to the originating story, the situation. And as he shared that story, we started to realize the absurdity of the situation. The fact he felt pain, the fact that he could understand that something was going on and he wasn't getting what he needed and crying wouldn't help him, but nor did he get what he wanted anyway. And we started to realize how absurd it was that he made that decision never to cry again. And as a result, we started laughing, and we began to laugh so hard that we actually did cry, both of us. But we were crying out of joy and happiness, and that's what he really came for healing, was to regain his happiness and his joy. Now that's an example of emotional healing. I also work with spiritual healing and mental healing as well. Let me share one more quick story, and that's about spiritual healing because I think it's so powerful. In this case, I was working with a massage therapist. He was a phenomenal massage therapist because he actually helped his clients really understand what their physical pains and discomforts were about. So he was always helping them to grow in some way. And he was wanting to grow himself. And in fact, he was feeling that there were some challenges with his own relationship to himself, and even with his wife and daughter. And so he came to me, and we started to trace back the situation to figure out what it was that we were really dealing with. And I asked him to go ahead and go back into go back in time to that place where this incident happened, an originating experience for him, and let me know when he got there. And I stayed silent for a little while and allowed him to go into the meditative state to find that place where the rift within himself had occurred. And he got to the place and he kind of said, "Here I am, I'm there." And he paused, and there was a tear in his eye, but yet there was a little bit of a smile at the corner of his eye, because he said, "Well, it's a little embarrassing to say, but this is a scene where I was really mad at God. In fact, I was so mad at God that I threw a stone at God, as if I could really throw a stone up in the sky and hit God." But that was his healing need. It was to realize that he'd been treating God as an adversary as opposed to an ally. So we worked around that. We released all the energy and the misperceptions of that so that he could really have God be his ally. So that's an example of a spiritual healing. What I do is not magic, but it is magical. So think about what can help you or friends or people you know It is challenging when we have discomfort in our lives. It's challenging when we're ill and sick and we need medical attention. And you can use these tools of energy healing to complement that what you do with the medical traditional procedures as well. But I want you to think about new options, new challenges, new opportunities, and consider taking the leap like your dendrites do in order to create new options and new potential for yourself. If you want to know more about my energy healing, you can contact me at Cheryl@goinggenius.com.